Hello world and hacking HR community. Welcome to panel Future of Work State in Europe. I'm Blanka Lasic and today I'm going to host this magical panel. And my dear panelists are Anita Lettink, Alper Utku, and Santiago Iñiguez. Hopefully, Santiago, I did it correctly regarding your last name.
Please. Perfectly. Thank you.
Okay. Please, before I go into framing the context of our panel, just give us your short introduction, and I'm going to let my dear colleague Anita to go first.
Thank you, Blanka. Hi, everyone. My name is Anita Lettink. I have been with NGA Human Resources for 19 years. And this month I started my sabbatical, so very fitting for the future of work.
Okay. Alper, can you go next?
Yes, this is Alper Utku. I'm a leading European Leadership University, which is a new generation university connecting employers and young professionals around the world with newly emerging jobs like AI, data science, and software engineering. And we're highly embedded in the European workplace trends, and looking forward to this session.
Thank you. And Santiago?
Hello, I'm Santiago Iñiguez. I'm president of IE University and vice chair of a joint venture between the Financial Times and IE Business School. And I've been working in management, development, and business education over the past 30 years and published a number of books and papers on the development of executives in companies. So thanks very much for inviting me to join this panel, and congratulations to Enrique Rubio.
Thank you, everybody. And once again, welcome. And also congratulations to Enrique, because he really did a great job for inviting so many experts regarding this and many HR topics. So let me do some framing. We are witnessing that the world is totally transforming, okay? There is lots of shifts going on, lots of disruption. We see it in demographic field, in technology field, in work as like tasks and everything that workforce needs to do. And regarding that and all your expertise and your field work, my first question is, what are you witnessing in your work regarding the workforce and workplace, like organizations and institutions? I'm again letting Anita to start.
Sure. So what I'm witnessing in our workplace is the need for flexibility. Mm-hmm. And we recently ran an HR 2025 survey, and one of the things that stood out from that was this requirement for flexibility. And it's not only flexible work hours, it's flexibility from a careers perspective. So maybe this year I want to take a couple of steps back, but then because I have to do some daycare for kids or I have to take care of my parents, but then next year I'm back in full force and I want another role that fits my life then. Flexibility in options, flexibilities in connecting, so work from home, work from another location in the world when I need that. So this need for flexibility also in contracting, right? Maybe I want to work 3 days a week. I want to study 1 day a week. I want to volunteer 1 day a week. This requirement for flexibility or this need for flexibility is prevalent everywhere we looked. And I also see that in our own company, as I just mentioned, I'm going on a sabbatical. That also is a need for flexibility. I've worked for a large number of years, and now I want to do something else. But before I do something else, I want to take a step back and rethink my options. So for me, it's flexibility.
Okay, just one more question regarding the flexibility. In Croatia, I may be witnessing that in ICT industry. With the startups or maybe some with programmers and developers. And I'm just wondering, are we prepared, or are we already doing that in Europe regarding the flexibility and all the options? Are corporations ready for that much flexibility?
I think if you look at the work that corporations do, they are ready. They just might not realize it, and especially from a leadership perspective, it requires more from you, because you need to think in terms of deliverables, outcomes. How am I going to achieve those if my people are not going to be in my office 5 days a week for 8 hours? So how can I achieve my results in different ways, using this flexible workforce, helping people who might not be in my office to still feel part of our team, right? And then come to those conclusions. Now, I'm going to say right away, not every job is fit for this type of flexibility. Of course, if you work in a hospital, you have to be there because you take care of patients. But there you see the flexibility come back in shift. In the shift planning that people want to do. Some want to work nights, some want to work days, some want to work like 4 hours in the morning and then maybe 2 hours at night. So this whole concept of flexibility is everywhere. It's going to increase.
Okay, so we are highlighting like deeper dive in flexibility options. Thank you. Alper, regarding your work, you're preparing youth for the market, and what are you witnessing? What is there to see in your work field?
I think I would underline and highlight Anita's point on flexibility, but we are also witnessing something. I think greater than I think the different trends like flexibility, which we call a skills gap, which happens at the European level and the global level. And what I understand from skills gap is simply young people. They are either, in many countries, young people with university graduations, the diplomas are either unemployed or underemployed, which in some countries that goes to 50%. And on the other side, there are dynamic economies like European economies who wants to grow and who needs talent. And with the newly emerging jobs and technology revolution and all the new trends, they have difficulty finding the talent because the academia is and the institutions are a little bit behind, creating these jobs primarily for the tech companies. So we have this big gap. One side, young people having challenges with the jobs, and the companies having challenge with their growth. And for me, I think after climate change and migration and global security, this is the number, top 5, one of the top 5 issues, maybe health, as we are discussing with the health issues globally. I think this is one of the top 5 issues in the world, and it has repercussions to other issues. So, and we are focusing on that. We're trying to bridge this gap by reskilling, upskilling global talent and offering them as a new workforce for growing companies. And that's what we are witnessing, and this will be probably like that for some time, because the tech development is still in progress, and it will not stop.
Okay, regarding the upskilling and reskilling, I have one more question. We all talk about it a lot, like in HR departments, on some strategic meetings, or we see it in the papers, on the internet. It's like becoming a buzzword. I just want to go maybe a little bit deeper. Is that upskilling and reskilling really going on in practice, and not just regarding your work, because I did the research, I know you're working hard regarding that, but just like the surroundings, are we just talking about it, or we are really doing some major actions?
Yes, I think we are I think there's a lot of talk and there are a lot of actions. I mean, I think we are seeing now the academia, reshaping its offers, and we are seeing newly emerging providers like boot camps and also MOOCs and online providers. And especially in Europe, we have apprenticeship models that is helping this reskilling. So it's happening, not in the pace that we need it, because we still have hundred thousands of unfilled jobs in the fields like AI, cybersecurity, software engineering, and this is growing with the new blockchain technology. This will be growing as well. But I think at least in the dynamic economies like US, Europe, we are seeing lots of activities at the government level, at the local municipalities level, and the corporations. What is missing is, I think, integrators, and there's a job for us as academia, as the universities. I think we can be the bridges, the integrators between the government and the corporates and the society, and we can become the system integrator. This is, in a way, for me, the role of the university, and we should be prepared going beyond the diploma. So we should offer a full stack development process from skilling all the way to job creation and job placement. So we cannot.
Okay. Like the full circle.
Yes, and finally, the lifelong learning ambition of European Union, and also it's valid globally with the aging workforce. I think we should move away from like a university with alumni to more a community of learners, which will stay in the community forever and continue to reskill, upskill themselves. So these are the things I'm saying.
Thank you so far. Santiago, I really want to hear what are you witnessing regarding also another university, but maybe a little bit even broader.
Let me just first endorse both Anita's comments about the need of more flexibility at work. And in fact, during these days, we are realizing about the potential of technologies, given, the coronavirus crisis, in order to attend your job from home, or even attend your courses via online forms of delivery. So I very much endorse the need of more flexibility in order to combine in a much better way your professional duties along with your private preferences. I also endorse very much Alper's enhancement of lifelong learning, given that we are going to live longer, and life expectancy actually increases every year by 3 months, every natural year. So it's very likely that the young students today will live, as we all know, over 120 years. This inevitably will probably mean that retirement will happen at a later time in life. And of course, given the change across many different industries and in the nature of jobs, this means that we will have to come back to school or to the university at least every 5 years in order to update our knowledge and upskill, all our capabilities. But anyway, lifelong learning, of course, should be a reference for all professionals and managers over the coming years. Allow me just to say something, because we sometimes emphasize very much the mission of universities are as bridges between academia and the professional world. And of course, one of the objectives of universities is actually prepare our students in the best possible way in order that they access the job market in the best possible conditions. Having said this, the other main mission of universities is actually developing cosmopolitan citizens. And this have to do with preparing someone, to comply or to develop some particular job. That's why, I very much disagree with some leading entrepreneurs and CEOs who actually try to dissuade youngsters from joining universities and offer them a fresh job at their companies, telling them, listen, come to our company because we will train you in the best possible way. Universities is actually a time in your life when you are developing your personality. you are learning a lot of things from your fellow students. You're cultivating the liberal arts and the humanities. And that actually develops many different skills, which are going to be essential throughout your life. So these two missions of the university should be enhanced, because many times we very much focus on just developing our students for achieving jobs. No? And if I may just add another angle, which I find particularly interesting, of course, the impact of automatization and technology across many different jobs. Many people emphasize this, and of course, lots of routinary jobs are going to be replaced over the coming years. But at the same time, there's going to be lots of opportunities in terms of creating new jobs, in terms of, the implementation of artificial intelligence will take time. There's also some traditional jobs that won't be replaced by technology. And finally, regulatory and financial circumstances may delay these of artificial intelligence across the job market. So what I would encourage, all young professionals and senior managers and professionals is to keep an eye on learning and education, and realize that lifelong learning is probably the reference throughout our professional careers.
I really love you guys, because you with your answers went a little bit like intro in my next question. And the next question was, how are leaders in corporations or universities or some local social institutions or in government, actually, how are they navigating the path through the future? Let me say like that. I'm also, again, emphasizing, we really, especially in Croatia, we really talk about it so much, like it's really hot topic. But what are the specifics that leaders are doing in the best practices, and of course in some practices that are not fitting in the state of future of work? Anita?
Yes. So I first wanted to make a comment on Alper's remarks, and refer everyone to the HR 2025 report, because one thing that stood out from there was, we asked a question about how well do you think educational institutions prepare people for the future of work? And Europeans were the ones that said for only 30% that they prepare people well for the future of work. And so more than 60% of Europeans thought that they didn't. And contrast that to people in Asia, who for more than 60% said, educational institutions prepare as well for the future of work. So Europe really stood out as a region where people seem to think that educational institutions need to improve, need to modernize to enable people to learn the right skills. And I think that's also the bridge to how are leaders preparing for the future of work? How are they preparing the companies? I think, and we work with a lot of global multinationals, and so they're large companies and they have tens of thousands of people work for them. Most of them really understand that something important is happening. They are, of course, introducing all kinds of new automation, new technologies. They see that it's really difficult to find people with the right skill sets to, to make full use of these technologies. And they are rethinking the ways that they hire people, they move people through the ranks. They manage people in a completely different way, also because of, all this information about Generation Z, the millennials, and you really need to be a company that people want to work for. You also see that they are also putting a lot of emphasis on social activities, not only within the companies, but also on purpose. So you become an organization with a certain purpose, and that can be an intrinsic value, or that is something that you do for others, like social responsibility projects that you do in the community. So you see that leaders of these companies are reaching out. They're extending beyond the boundaries of their companies. They're extending to others. They're extending to non-corporations. And so in that way, your company really becomes, in a way, a sort of society, sort of mini society, with all kinds of relationships and all kinds of different angles, I would say, which fulfills a need for these people. So this is beyond the sales conversation. This is more, I'll leave that to Alper and Santiago, but this is more from a social shift that I see in these large corporations. And the thing usually is that when these large corporations go there, the somewhat more smaller and more domestic oriented companies are following, because if they don't, they will not be able to hire the best talent, because people will join other companies. And at the moment, because the lack of people, and because unemployment is so low, companies really have to listen to employees. And with the current demographics in many countries, that will not go away, simply because people are getting older. There are less people in the workforce, so you have to really fight for the people that are there. And for the next 5 to 10 years, automation will not be able to replace all those people. So there will be a tug of war. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Alper, what do you think about the best practices, what leaders do regarding navigating that path through the future, and maybe some practices that are not so fitting or helpful regarding the state where we are now?
I think I want to build on what I heard from Santiago and Anita. First of all, enhancing what your comment, Santiago, is the university's role. I think we sometimes forget that, and we see people being attracted to, being a dropout or being in a boot camp. And I think the interesting driver there is the young generation once more have their freedom and flexibility, as we've been speaking today, as a primary value. And they see traditional institutions, including our universities and the corporates, as not so flexible and freedom-oriented institutions. They said they sometimes see them even being oppressive. So they take a risk, and I agree with you. I think the universities prepare them for upward mobility, for future, for personality growth, for becoming the perfect person, in a way, perfecting their being. So as an answer in that sense, as an answer to your question, Blanka, I think for embracing the future of work, we have to be aware of that trend of the freedom and flexibility, freedom of growth, freedom of learning, freedom of choices. And when we make our institutions, including universities and corporates, places where people can bring the best of their potential, with having a number of choices that they can make, then I think it will be easier for the younger generation to make that choice, because otherwise, when you see a young person who is not going to a university or not choosing a corporate, they end up being the future blue collar in many cases without even knowing that. For example, there's an issue about coding boot camps at the moment, which is very popular around the world. But the coding boot camps, they have no quality assurance, no scalability, sustainability. And when you go there, yes, you have all the freedom, the sexiest jobs as a coder, but you end up being the blue collar for the future of work. And whereas when you have when you go through a structured process, that you have a leadership potential, you have choices, you have credibility. So what I'm trying to say is, the smart organizations like new generation universities and smart organizations which are implementing new ways of working. Like we have the trends like agile, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Agile is a new way of working. And you bring the qualities and values of agile working. This actually satisfied the new generation because it gives a lot of freedom. It has a lot of, it's outcome driven, speed driven. It is emancipatory, so you can be visible in the organization. It's not top down. It is
Mm-hmm.
holocratic. So you have wider organization structures. So I think organizations with experimenting with new ways of being organized and learning and producing work, they are ahead and they are attracting the generations, new generations. Also, I think like-minded, right mindset workers, and they go ahead, get ahead in the competition.
Mm-hmm. Santiago, you already mentioned something that leaders do that is not so helpful regarding that telling young people that they need to start working immediately, especially if they have some talents and major potentials, and you believe in something else. But do you have like some experience regarding the leadership or some of the leaders' activities that are really collaborating with universities and helping young people to go through that university experience?
Absolutely. And I always recall a quote from John Fitzgerald Kennedy, you know, the president, the US,
Mm-hmm.
used to say, this is actually a quote from a speech that he pronounced on the very day that he was killed. Leadership and education are indispensable to each other. The fact is that when you find a leader, you always realize that the successful leaders at the forefront of companies and other organizations
Mm-hmm.
are people who keep reading. They are very open to new knowledge. They are humble. They keep gathering with the experts and the people who know about each discipline. So
Mm-hmm.
again, you know, learning and knowledge is actually a reference to identify the good leaders and the best companies. In fact, you're probably aware of these rankings that are made on companies, the best companies to work for.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the aspects that is decisive in order to choose companies by the millennials and the youngsters is actually how much they invest in training and education, because this ensures the capabilities and employability of workers throughout their careers. Allow me to say something about Anita's and Alper's comments before. Regarding this report on universities, of course, the general opinion from the public is sometimes quite critical about the performance of universities. But let's be very honest. I mean, there's all sorts of universities, as there are many different classes of companies or governments. There are universities that are innovative and that are linked to the needs of the market. And there are some other universities which are more traditional and classical. And there are a number of rankings, for example, or surveys like QS or Times Higher Education, which already publish rankings of universities in terms of their employability, in terms of how they prepare their graduates to fit with the market needs. This is just, you know, a piece of information that might be helpful for those who are looking for a career or an offer, an educational offer, which is actually helpful in order to join the market. Anyway, Anita also made a reference to sustainability, and this is, of course, you know, something which is going to become a key element for the education of future leaders. What we find is that the youngsters and the millennials are very demanding as regards whether we educate them in a sustainable culture that is respectful to all the SDGs, from, you know, respect to the environment to the change of poverty conditions, diversity, and many other things. So this has to be embedded in our educational programs, how to develop sustainability in the mindset of our students. And this, of course, may require changes across the board in terms of preparing not just the young people, but also the senior guys and all the members in our faculties. But anyway, the future is fascinating. There's lots of challenges, but at the same time, I guess we have the elements in order to implement promising programs that can actually fulfill this mission that I was mentioning before, preparing global citizens as well as preparing our graduates for accessing to very competitive jobs.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. When I was speaking with Anita and with you, Alper, on our prep call, you told me some really interesting stories or let's say practices regarding the collaboration with and alignment with business, let's say, sector, workforce, like all the people that are out on the market, and let's say leading social or government institutions. So Anita, you mentioned me that you have like a good experience regarding that you are cooperating with some institutions regarding the upskilling and reskilling and all the development factor. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Of course. Yeah, so we provide HR and payroll outsourcing, and we implement these systems. And one of the things that we do is we take over the HR work from companies. And we have a big center in Granada, in Spain, where more than 1,000 people work together to service the need of the clients that we have. And we've been there for more than 10 years. And when we started, we developed a really close relationship with the University of Granada, because first of all, we were in need of highly educated people, people with great IT skills, people with HR skills. And we found it was, when we looked at the curriculum of the university, the IT curriculum was good, but the HR curriculum didn't quite fit what we need for the workers that we hired. So we developed a very close relationship with the University of Granada. Some of our employees now teach in these classes, but we also take students in. We have a couple of different programs where students can do an internship with our company. But we, for instance, also have a program where PhD students come to us, and I had one of those students in my team. So they work for us part of the week, and then part of the week they work on their PhD. And so they get a really good feel of what kind of challenges a company like ours, a global company like ours, has. And part of their PhD thesis helps us think about our future and improve what we need to do. So there's a really close collaboration between an educational institute and a company. And I think more and more companies are developing that, because it allows education to understand better what is required to deliver good students that can actually be of value to companies. And for us, we have access to far more knowledge and insights, and the newest insights, especially newest scientific ideas. We can test them out. And so both of us came out of it stronger, I would say.
Just to maybe encourage universities or leaders from universities that are maybe listening and seeing us, you were doing changes regarding curriculum. I believe and sense that is not just like a simple thing to do. Can you just give us in short, how was that process, if you can, share that with, how was the process done? Because people, you know that people don't like to change things that were going on for so many years. So just a little bit about the process.
Yeah, so I wasn't part of the process itself. I was part of, I would say, the recipients, because people that came out of the process worked in teams that were serving the clients that I was responsible for. And I think at a very early stage, I really have to give credits to the University of Granada, because they recognized that this was something that they would participate in and that would be beneficial for both of us. So they also, what I really liked is that they welcomed people from our company, so more business people, and took them into the curriculum, made them part of it. And so it was really a nice collaboration with benefits for both of us, right? And don't think that we completely overhauled the curriculum, but I think we were able to bring in some angles, bring in some knowledge that made it better.
Yeah, actually, Alper at some point earlier mentioned that we have the mission to bring the best out of the people. So the thing that you are saying now, it's like the collaboration of the university and company, where your university respects all the company's experience and vice versa, and nice collaboration is coming. Okay, great, a great experience, and of course encouragement that is doable, and the results can be great. So Alper, you also mentioned me that, I mean, you are doing that already, but you mentioned something interesting regarding the Amsterdam model that I wanted to dive deeper in it, because it really has some good insights.
So I think you're mentioning that we are our partnership with the startup ecosystem corporates in Amsterdam. Yes. I think this is something we're experimenting. We are for the last year and a half, we've been members of the Amsterdam Economic Board, which is an initiative by the local government and the corporates and the startup ecosystem to really improve the economic status of Amsterdam, and particularly focusing on talent. So we have close to 100 members in this board, and we are all active, taking charge. 2 universities are together with us. University of Amsterdam is a member. So I have different initiatives really bridging this skills gap for Amsterdam and bringing talent to Amsterdam. So and we have challenges, and we have lots of early success stories as well. But what I learned from this experience is I think this is the basis of that what we should do almost in everywhere, that coming together to solve that challenge. And one of the challenges we have, in addition to employability, but the challenges we have is the cultural gap. So, so in a way, we don't have enough people for the growing number of jobs in Amsterdam. Then we need people from different parts of the world. Then the culture becomes an issue. So that actually highlights what I heard from you, Santiago, is actually developing the personality of the young people, young professionals around a set of values. And this gives us a big role. So as European Leadership University, we put equal emphasis on what we call leadership, which is actually personal and professional development, as much as the technical development. And our definition of leadership, in a way, in line with the leading edge thinking in the leadership literature, where we see leadership as a participatory, as an engagement act, rather than something about power and authority, which is, I think, for me, a little bit delusional view, which has put us in problem in the whole planet at the moment, creating the climate issues. So for me and for us, for my team, how can we learn to engage into the relationships in different levels, intentionally and consciously and in an educated way, in your relationships at the one-to-one level, with your family, with your peers, with your friends, in a team level or company level, community level, and planetary level. So I think when we have this conscious and intentional participation ethic, people start to call us as leaders, and we are in leadership domain, and we take that responsibility as the university to give that also skill development opportunity to the young people, and that helps us to solve the culture issues, because Europe wants a workforce who is responsible, accountable adults who are able to collaborate, lead, be creative, take charge. And I think that is also a major opportunity and challenge at the same time that we have to follow. So in a way, we are experimenting with all of that in cooperation, collaboration with an ecosystem, and it's promising. I think Amsterdam is a wonderful foundation ground for creative, trust-based, collaborative workforce.
Okay, thank you, Santiago. I just remembered something that you were mentioning earlier. I remember the quote. I'm not sure whose quote is it, but it goes like, "Every great leader is firstly reader." So I totally agree with everything that you mentioned before. As you are on the university, it's the same question, but I'm going to modify it. I'll do a little bit modification regarding it. Do you have collaboration with corporate world or maybe SME world? And who is making the first step? Are they coming to the university and trying to make some collaboration, or you are reaching them? And what are your experiences on that field?
Thank you, Blanka. No, it's actually, universities are part of the world. They are not detached, in the ivory tower, or they shouldn't be actually, because we sometimes find academics, as you actually insinuate, who are probably very detached from the actual world. But there's a number of ways for engaging in a much closer way to the professions. For example, what we do at IE University is introducing the curriculum, applied projects. Internships are actually a core part of the curriculum, but we also bring clinical professors, those who can actually bring first-hand knowledge of the actual world. At the same time, I'm sure that many universities do the same thing. Something that we emphasize very much, and this is very much in line with Alper's comment, is diversity. We live in a cross-cultural world where true leaders have to be aware of this diversity, cultural, of course, in terms of gender, in terms of preferences, life preferences. So new leadership is not anymore about just charisma. It's actually about leading others, about motivating other people. And this requires, of course, being able to identify what are the essential aspects of diversity. We have, for example, more than 136 nationalities on campus, and part of the learning process is actually realizing about this diversity of visions of the world. Of course, quite sometimes clashes, cultural clashes, but this is an anticipation of what students will find later in life when they work with different people. At the same time, we probably need a number of structural changes at universities to promote this closeness to the professions and to the actual world. First, and this was something that was mentioned by Anita as well, PhDs. I mean, PhDs need to be not just good researchers, but actually they need to be aware of what are the real problems that need to be solved in the world. So we need to train them not just as very good researchers, but also as good professors, as people who are in very close contact with the world leaders. Second, regulation. Probably education is one of the most over-regulated sectors worldwide. And sometimes regulation, lags behind the changes that occur in the actual world. So I would leave universities to be much more autonomous in order to fit their programs with the actual needs from the world. And finally, research. Research sometimes tends to be very theoretical, very much, satisfying the needs of other academics and having nothing to do with the actual needs from companies and organizations in the real world. So I would very much emphasize the applied character of research. Of course, good research is not theoretical or practical, but good research is actually the theory that can be applied into practice. This is something that Immanuel Kant, the leading philosopher, said. There's no theoretical and applied research. There's just good theories and bad theories. No? And the bad theories are those that are not applicable to the actual world. So let me just finalize by saying something that you, Blanka, was emphasizing, which is change. We all need to get prepared for change. So probably the major challenge that we educators have is how to instill in our students and executives this awareness of the need of changing throughout our lives, because the rest of the world will continue changing and we need to adapt to those changes.
Yeah, and change is continuous, like it's never-ending story. Yeah. Okay, so since this is HR community and lots of HR people are watching this, let me just ask you regarding your practice or maybe your personal beliefs, whose responsibility in institutions and in government or in business or NGOs, let's say, is to lead and to do major activities regarding the future of work? Because sometimes in business we hear that HR, it's like needs to be a supportive role, doesn't need to be like the totally strategic and leading something, and in other perspectives they're saying no, HR needs to be like first line and inviting all the leaders and management to build something new. Anita?
Yeah, so from my experience and having been on the leadership team, this is really such a profound change that this is the responsibility of the whole leadership team, not just HR. If you look at our leadership team, for instance, I was responsible for strategy and alliances. So my job was to really think through what is happening and sharing that with my colleagues. Also to think about which companies, which vendors are really tying into this idea that we have about the future of work and who should we reach out to and partner with. Now that has consequences for work. So for instance, operations colleagues need to think about, okay, if there's a different need for services, what services are those and what kind of people do we need? And then HR obviously comes in to think about, okay, if this is the changing need, where do we find these people? Or how do we upskill and reskill the people that we currently have? How do the reward structure, what do they look like? How are we going to follow these people and rate their performance? So it's really a big job, and I would definitely recommend every leadership team to think through, what kind of company are you in 3 to 5 years from now? How can you benefit from all the technology? What kind of impact does automation have? What kind of people are you servicing in 5 years? Who are your customers? And then start working your way back about, because especially reskilling and upskilling, those efforts take time. And you need to identify where your new employees are coming from and what motivates them to work for you and do a good job. So from my perspective, it starts with the leadership team, and then it involves, the wider organization, because you need to tell your people and you need to take them on this journey so that everyone understands what kind of change we are looking at and can prepare themselves for it.
Okay, so if I understood, it's like, again, great collaboration with management and leadership and the executive and HR departments and specialists, generalists.
Yeah, and don't forget the last thing I was at, involve employees.
Of course.
The program involved everyone in the company, so that if you want to participate, you can, but at least something is, you need to prepare yourself for change. And then up to everyone individually to say, okay, I'm going to do that. Or yeah, I don't believe it, so I'm going to do something else.
That's the real participation process.
Yes, exactly.
Not to be in the room and prepare something and just communicate it, but to involve all the organization. Okay, Alper, what do you think it's like HR's now biggest shift and challenge, and what would you like to recommend HR community where to focus most?
Yes, I think I've worked, I mean, before becoming an education entrepreneur, I worked with HR professionals for more than 25 years. So being as a consultant and a trainer, leading a management consulting firm. So, and I worked with more than probably close to 30, 40 countries. And, you know, in my early times, we were discussing how we move from personnel management to HR. Which is almost 27 years ago. I think what's happening at the moment, it reminds me a little bit of these times. That was a big shift at that time, but I think even when I compare to the shift from personnel management to human resources management practices, I think the current change is at the seismic level. It is maybe the old change was a wave. What we are facing right now is more a tsunami. So I think there's a greater mandate for HR because they are the center point of the organizations in terms of people practices and how they engage people from outside the organization and inside the organization with the organization's goals and strategies. And I think they have a critical role to remind organizations their role in the society. They serve a purpose, and the profit comes second. I think organizations are places where people, I think, work, serve, produce, create for the sake of a greater purpose rather than creating more profit. This purpose can be at the, I think, at the national level, local level, or planetary level. But we just need to be mindful of that, and they have a role to balance this for the interests of people working in the organizations and people working in the greater professional community. And they have a challenge and opportunity at the same time to have a greater voice if they can do that. And my advice always been to HR professionals to have the learning agility and flexibility that we also advise to the people in the organization, and keep abreast with that change happening. So with the technology, with the social changes, and all these forces. So yeah, HR, I think it all depends on us as HR professionals in that sense, whether we will be on the winning side and losing side personally and at an organizational level, on how much we embrace the change that's coming up. And it's a big, what we have seen is nothing. It's the much bigger change is coming with the technologies like blockchain, and that will completely change how we work, how we engage, and how organizations exist. So, and people will be the center point of that change. So HR, in a nutshell, HR has a greater responsibility and opportunity for the future of work.
Thank you. Santiago, what is your message and encouragement to the HR community?
Well, if you now ask most CEOs, what is the major asset at their companies, they will probably respond, it's the people, it's the talent. So it's not the assets that appear in balance sheet, it's not the technology, it's not the platform, it's actually the talent that compose the company. And this has lots of consequences for the new role of human resource or talent managers. In fact, what we see now is that as compared to the past where directors of personnel used to be those just hiring and firing, now the heads of human resources or the heads of talent have the position of vice presidents at the company. They belong to it, and they work very closely with CEOs. I was once on a panel led by Fortune, the magazine, to identify the companies, the best companies to work for. And one of the criteria that was used in order to rank the companies was actually the time devoted by the CEO in the selection of people and the training and promotion.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
No, it's vital, because if we truly believe that people is the major asset at our organizations, then CEOs and the leaders should devote the necessary time in order to identify and promote that talent. Of course, this will have lots of consequences beneficial for heads of human resources. This role will become much more diversified. And in fact, now talent comprises, not just the selection or the promotion, but also the training. We see universities, we see lots of programs, internal programs at companies. And then we see an increasing link between the role of the human resource manager with the corporate strategy of the company. In fact, the way you select people and you promote people has to do with the overall strategy for the corporation. There needs to be, there's some alignment and fit. So in sum, the hot ticket of the C-suite in the future at companies and organizations will certainly become the human resource function, the human resources role.
So you're becoming even more popular now when saying all that encouragement messages. So we are in our final minutes, as I can see on my phone. So I would just like to wrap up our discussion and allowing you to give us, like, from everything that you heard from each other on this panel discussion, what is your final message to the world or Hacking HR community? Some key 3 insights, just to be in short, to respect the time. Anita?
Yes, and I was reading some of the comments on LinkedIn during our conversation, and I think to respond to some of the questions, if you still think about your company as your company within boundaries, then you are not prepared for what is happening. So, and you also heard that in a conversation today, companies will be going out. So think about outside your company. Yes, you will. Someone asked, do you need to upskill gig workers? I would say yes, because as a company, you need them now, you have them now, you can upskill them. Maybe they don't work for you the next year, but in 2 years, you might need them again, and then you want to be absolutely sure that they bring the right talent. So think outside of your company, think ahead, think about the future, start building those relationships, make sure that you have access to the talent that can help you execute your strategy. Because if you don't have access to that talent, and if you don't play a role in creating the talent, making sure that people have those skills, your company will not exist in 5 years.
Okay.
Really start thinking broad and think wide. The world has no boundaries anymore. We've all realized that just recently, right? And so companies have no boundaries anymore either.
Okay, thank you, Anita. Alper?
I think building on Anita's definition of the world and the corporate as an open boundary space, boundaryless space, I'd like to encourage, I think, HR professionals particularly to take charge in their organizations to make their organization as an open, generative, progressive spaces where with the external and internal communities of practice, they can do great things, serve their local communities, serve their country, serve the planet overall, and attract like-minded people, even to take this even further. That would be my final message.
Thank you,
We
Alper.
have
And
the learning agility mindset for that.
thank you. Santiago?
Just very quickly, the best is yet to come for human resource managers. The future provides lots of challenges, but at the same time, many opportunities. So what I'm sure is that the role of managers of talent and people will be enhanced much more in the future.
Okay. For me as well, just quickly, because we are running out. Firstly, thank you. You made my day. I really enjoyed this discussion. I know that people that are watching us really gain a good insight or maybe topics to discover yet and explore yet. My encouragement to the HR community is something that I didn't tackle earlier, but I would like to encourage not just HR in corporate sector, but HR in small and medium companies. Be strong, be brave, continue to learn and collaborate wider with all other experts. So everybody from Hacking HR community and for my dear panelists, thank you again. Big hugs from Zagreb and let's stay connected. Thank you.